party, it's late. You stay over, never over. One more drinking till you're sober. You stay over, never over. One more drinking till you're sober. You said that I was. You had me love struck. That city life will make you go. No place like home. No place like home. No place like home. 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 No place like home. Had a lover boy. Now you're on the other side of the tracks with another boy. Chasing that greener grass, you stay over, never over. One more drinking till you're sober. You stay over, never over. One more drinking till you're sober. You said that I was. You had me love struck. That city life will make you go. No place like home. No place like home. No place like home. 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 No place like home. Make the night go slower. It's lonely in October. Closer, closer, closer. Lightning in a bottle. Lightning in a bottle, baby. Shattered on the table. Shattered on the table. We can kill the labels. Hold me, need me, not love. You said that I was. You had me love struck. That city life will make you go. Oh yeah. No place like home. No place like home. No place like home. Home. No place like home.
Information Man Show, ladies and gentlemen. There it is. Sorry to keep you waiting. Thank you, though. I know it's a late night. I had some personal things to deal with today, or I would have went live a lot earlier. So I want to thank everybody for coming through and supporting the brothers channel tonight. Thank you all that are come right on through to this very important broadcast. We're talking about critical race theory. I'm going to get into it now. Let me get right into it like this. I've got my man Joe Madison of the Black. He goes by the name the Black Eagle on Sirius XM Radio, and I got to give the brother some credit because he really broke down. I'm going to play an audio for you, all of you out there, where he pretty much summarized or breaks down the history of critical race theory. Critical race theory has been with us, ladies and gentlemen, since the 70s and 80s. Dr. Bell was instrumental in pushing this forward. It got pushed forward in the 1980s, 89. It's been with us all along. And what's happening is that it's become politicized. It's become political because you have the conservatives, the right wing, the far right, the Colt 45 followers, and all the QAnon followers who have now attached themselves to this such a thing called critical race theory. This damn critical race theory has been around for quite some time, and now all of a sudden they want to attack it and demonize this. Let me just say this, first of all, to everybody that's coming into the chat room. I want to thank you for coming in tonight and being a part of this broadcast. But most importantly, let me make this distinction right now, that race is not anything that is a theory, okay? Critical race theory, they came up with this word. I don't think we should use the word, because what it does is it plays right into the hands of our enemies, because what it is, it's one of these, it's a catchphrase that they're using that they can put all, and I do mean all, Black history under that umbrella. Now, I had some clips that I wanted to put on the screen, and I failed or have forgotten to load them up onto my system, but I actually have the clips in my phone, and I'm going to read a couple of things to you. I want you to know what's going on right now. Right now, they are attacking even the history of Martin Luther King. This is the headlines from ABC News. Martin Luther King Jr. and the KKK, Ku Klux Klan, and more may soon be cut from Texas educational requirements. So in the state of Texas, conservative state, they're considering cutting away the history of the Ku Klux Klan, because they don't want this generation of kids, they don't want the next generation to be aware of the history of this country as it relates to racism, white supremacy, and the oppression that has gone on, to the point that they don't even want the kids to learn about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was a peaceful man. That means if they whitewash Dr. Martin Luther King away, that means you whitewashed the civil rights movement. I was talking to Brother Joe, last night on my podcast. He came on my panel, just me and him, and he said in a couple of years, a couple of decades, the history that we know right now will all be whitewashed away. No, the kids won't even know anything about the fact that there was slavery in this country. Kids won't even know that there was oppression, Jim Crow, redlining, all these things that Black people have gone through in this country, right? All that'll be washed away, because what's happening is that you have the conservatives, you have the Donald Trump Code 45 followers who are now demonizing Black history. They're going after critical race theory, saying that critical race theory is teaching white kids in particular, because that's who's really up in arms. And of course, you got a couple of sellouts and buck dancers, Black folks that are joining this bandwagon. But pretty much what it is that they're attacking critical race theory and saying that it's teaching white kids to be ashamed of themselves, that white kids teaching them that they are racist, that they are white supremacists and what have you, when in fact, critical race theory is teaching the systems of racism that has been embedded in this country through institutionalized systems such as the government, right? What did Neely Fuller Jr. always tell us? And he always said that within white supremacy, within the system that we live in, it controls these areas, okay? It controls education. Believe it or not, it controls sex. We got a lot of weird things going on with our alternative things going on in our society today. It controls sex. It controls politics, controls war, economics, labor, all these things that Neely Fuller Jr. said once himself, ladies and gentlemen.
You do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works. Everything else that you understand will only confuse you, only confuse you, only confuse you.
You are listening to Information Man. Please make sure
I want to
subscribe
thank everybody
this
that's
channel.
come in tonight. I know it's late. We got Little Rock 2517 in the house. We got my man Yo, it's your boy in the house. Good to see you. We got Earl Owens, RY. We got the sister from the podcast. What do we got here? Coach. She's a Manifest. Sister Manifest is in the house. We got Be the Difference Clothing. Let me give a clap to everybody in the chat room, and particularly that sister, because she was just on my show not too long ago when I pretty much interviewed her not too long ago, and I really enjoyed that interview. It was an excellent interview. It was a very positive show. Over here on this platform, the Information Man Show, you're going to get all different point of views and perspectives, ladies and gentlemen, all different point of views and perspectives. I'm going to talk about everything. I'm going to talk about everything: history, motivational speaking, things you need to know health-wise. And I'm going to talk about the racial issues, the social issues, and all the things that people want to get away with and people that don't want to deal with it. Not a laughing matter. It's just the truth, ladies and gentlemen. So critical race theory is something that started in law school. It's a legal term. It was something that was being taught at the legal level in law school, if I'm not mistaken, at Harvard University. And Dr. Bell was involved in that process. And I'm serious when I say this. They are serious in Texas about wiping out all forms of history. And what they're doing is that they want to get rid of all forms of history that does not paint American society in a very favorable light. That's really what this is all about. Anything that does not paint America in this very favorable light, they want to get rid of. And they want to get rid of immediately, as quickly as they can, ladies and gentlemen. So it's just something you need to be aware of, that this is a reality. This is something that is happening in the country. So anything that's seen as negative, that their kids may be exposed to, that's about history, they don't want. Now, check this out. My theory on this is the reason why people in white society or in this world don't want and feel a threat by critical race theory is because you're seeing a shift in America. You're seeing a shift in the demographics, right? Just like Dr. Francis Welsing stated, that the European is concerned about their genetic survival because the genes are recessive, meaning you can't reproduce yourself. I, as a black man, this is proven science. This is facts. I, as a black man, can reproduce myself with any woman grace. That child's going to have those pronounced Negroid features in that child. That's facts.
You are listening to Information Man. Please make sure to subscribe to his channel.
Definitely subscribe if you can. I would definitely appreciate that. So there's a threat because, just like Public Enemy said many years ago, a fear of a black planet. Most of the planet is made up of people who are melanated, that look just like me, and those of you out there possibly that are watching me live right now tonight, laid across the country and in good time in the West Coast right now. So the concern for one's genetic survival comes into place. If you look at the statistical numbers, don't take my word for it, ladies and gentlemen, you can look this up for yourself. When you look at the Europeans, they are not reproducing themselves, meaning their birth rates are going down as birth rates are increasing around the world when it comes to melanated people. Now, in Africa, they've done everything in the continent of Africa to kind of bring all kind of disaster there to destroy the people. And they've done everything they can, messing around medically with those folks, with black folks over there in the continent. But yet, Africa as a continent is the youngest place in the world, the youngest continent. They have the youngest, they are a young, the continent is old, it's been around since ancient times, but the people, the population is a population of young. So melanated people such as black people are producing ourselves, and Europeans make up a small, minute population. So therefore, there's a concern deep down inside of losing power. If we allow critical race theory to be in schools, or for people to teach this to our kids, that somehow our dirty little secret is going to come out and the whole world's going to know it and our kids are going to know it. We don't want our kids knowing that George Washington was a slave owner who pulled the teeth of his slaves out of their mouth and put it in his teeth because he had bad dental work. We don't want our kids to know that Thomas Jefferson actually owned slaves and raped black women in the slave quarters. We don't want our young white kids knowing and other kids knowing about slave trade and some of the downtrodden things that have happened through Jim Crow and a lot of the laws that are in place today. We don't want our kids knowing that. Only tell the good part about history. And this is the way it works. When as Nellie Fuller says, if you don't understand white supremacy, how it works and how it operates, everything you think you know about racism and the things that are happening in the world today will only confuse you. Only confuse you, ladies and gentlemen. It will only confuse you. Okay? Now, and I want to thank everybody that's coming to the chat room. Earl Owens, RY, Urban. We got Urban in the house. Thank you. Angela's in the house. There's people that I may not. Beverly is in the house. There's a lot of great folks that are coming to the house that I want to acknowledge, and I really appreciate them being here with me tonight and being a part of the program and what I've got going over here tonight. So everything, the history, they're trying to suppress information. Information, as I always say, is power, ladies and gentlemen.
Information is power.
And so the most important thing is the currency of information. If you can suppress information and you can change the history and whitewash history and create social engineering, then you can totally wipe out what has gotten us to this point. You can also make future generations very ignorant to what the facts are. When you look at Tulsa, Oklahoma, what did they do in Tulsa? They did the same thing. They wiped out the history of the massacre, the 1921 massacre. They didn't want the kids, not black kids, not any race of kids in this town to know the history. And over many years, you had black children, black teenagers, black adults, as well as other races of people and ethnic groups who had no idea about this massacre because they weren't teaching it in schools. Now in the state of Texas, they're trying to attack the idea of teaching the history, even as it includes Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The Ku Klux Klan have a horrible history, and they want to run away from it, and they want to keep our kids deaf, dumb, and blind. Let me break down the next article to you. A critical race theory battle invades school boards with help from conservative groups in towns nationwide. Well, connect with conservative activists and Fox News have ramped up the tension in fighting over this issue of race inequality in school and equity in school. Now, this is the one that's going to blow your socks off right now that I've got to read to you. I want you to hear this. I wish I had the clips that I can sort of put on the screen, but I got it right here in the phone. Check this out. This is out of Truthout. Truthout is a great website that you should check out. This is under the news and racial justice of Truthout. Right-wing groups are taking over library boards to remove books on racism. Did you hear what I said? This is how deep it's getting.
Tell the truth.
This is how deep it's getting, ladies and gentlemen. They're actually infiltrating our school libraries, maybe even local libraries, to try to take out books that talk about the racial history of American society. So this whole critical race theory is a manipulation. Don't get caught up in the word. The real word for this, when you hear people on Fox News and all the news outlets and all the talking heads talking about critical race theory is evil, they're actually saying that black history is evil. That's the truth.
Tell the truth.
They're using the word critical race theory to hide behind their racism when they're not happy with a piece of history. You notice the one thing that they're not saying on the news and all these talking conservative heads, they're not saying that the information that's being taught, if it even is being taught in schools, because they haven't come up with heavy evidence, there might be incidents here and there where you have teachers that are maybe teaching history, black history, or history of what has happened in this country. And what's happening is you have parents, school boards that are being infiltrated who don't like the fact that they're teaching the history that doesn't paint America in a good light. So then what they do, they say, oh, that's critical race theory. That's part of the manipulation, ladies and gentlemen. So anything that they don't like that is teaching a history that does not put white people or Europeans or American society in a favorable light, now they can say that that should not be taught, and they can label it critical race theory. Don't get caught up in these highfalutin words like that. It's black history. when you hear them attack it. So this is what they do. They've always wanted to get rid of black history out of schools, even though they never really taught our history. It's been a struggle to get our history taught in these schools and universities. I went to San Francisco State University, and we had one of the first of its kind ethnic studies department, and we had a black studies department before many schools across the country even had these type of things. We had black literature, black media, history, black pigmentation. That's a class I took studying melanin and how that operates in the body, history, art, everything. I learned from people like Dr. Wade Nobos, Dr. Richardson, Dr. Phil McGee, who is no longer with us, Ova Tashaka. We had excellent scholars that were teaching us things that we never learned. None of this stuff I learned in high school. None of this stuff I've learned in elementary school. Most of the history that you get in traditional schools, public schools, what have you, is usually the history of George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Honest Abe, never told a lie. Then you get history about the Greeks where they lied to you and tell you that the Greeks created philosophy and society. That's a lie. Read the book by James. It's called Stolen Legacies. It tells how the Greeks went into Egypt. Many of the Greek philosophers were students of black people within the Egyptian or the Kemet mystery systems, school mystery systems, in which they learned. I think Aristotle was in their schools for 40 years. And when they went back to Greece and they start coming up with philosophies, most of their philosophies and their knowledge they got from the Kemites, from the Egyptians. And one point in time when Greece rose up in power, they went into Egypt, what we know as Egypt, and they stole knowledge, destroyed libraries so that there would not be any written history of this knowledge. They destroyed and they pillaged, and it's called stolen legacies. A lot of people jump on people who wear Greek letters, who are members of fraternities and sororities, and don't even realize that the Greek letters are also stolen from out of Kemet. The Greeks got their language or their lettering from Kemet, which really means the land of the black.
Tell the truth.
Before it moved into be calling Egypt. And you have all those first pyramids that were being built. You had Upper and Lower Egypt. You had the Nubians. It was the Nubians in the northern part who actually brought the pyramids, the idea of pyramids, to what we know as Egypt today. And that's the truth.
Tell the truth.
And so when you're teaching this history, like I just explained to you, that could be deemed as critical race theory, and it could be deemed as something evil when it's actually real history. What's happening in our society, whether it's black, white, or otherwise, is that most of our kids are spending most of their time in these schools reading books on history that's telling them lies. Reading books on history. See, there's a word called history, and then there's history. It's their history. So you break that word down, history, and it also breaks down to is history, meaning it's their history. Those who are in control of the media, print media, audio media, and visual media, if you control the image, you can control the mind. If you control the image, you control the audio, what we get in our ears, you can control the mind. And so therefore, Europeans have manipulated the history to make you think that they created and invented everything. Just like they said, Thomas Edison created the light bulb. That's not true.
Tell the truth.
So they really want to be in control of the narrative to teach us what they want us to believe and what they want us to feel. That's what's going on here, ladies and gentlemen. I gotta tell the truth about that. That's really what's going on here. And this is the Information Man Speaks podcast and not podcast, but Information Man show. You know, I'm so used to doing my program on the second channel that I'm sometimes saying the second channel name on the first channel. But the point is, they want to change the narrative. They want to make you believe that our history is evil because it paints in true light what the Europeans did to the world. And if you say something that they don't like, they don't want to believe, then they're going to strike it as critical race theory. Case in point, another book that you should get. It's called It's by Ivan van Sertima. They came before Columbus, 800 BC. Ivan van Sertima details in that book the arrival of what we call the African, the black man's presence in North America, even though we know that there's always been a presence here, because all over the world, the black man, you can find the black man, the black woman, our DNA all over this planet. But in there, he accounts how the Africans traveled over to South America, to America. They exchanged technology with the Aztecs, the Mayans, all the ancient people that were here. And in fact, because of the connection of technology, plus the Egyptians or the Kemites came over as well, they, to this day, have found Egyptian pottery in South America that dates back to thousands of years. They said, my God, even the Egyptians came over here. And in Ivan van Sertima's book, he says that there's a pyramid that they found a few years back that was hidden by the forest in South America. And they said that pyramid, it was closely in design in terms of its measurements to a pyramid in Egypt, which means he believed in his hypothesis that the same architect of the pyramid, of the biggest pyramid in Egypt, had an influence on pyramids that were starting to pop up here in what we call South America and North America. So when you're talking that type of history, they don't want that history to be taught to our kids. And for most of us, if you're black, 51 years old like myself, I didn't get any of this history until I went to college. Critical race theory primarily is something that is taught in college, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I want to get ready to let you hear something. And I want to say peace to everybody in the chat room again who's in the house. RY, Tiffany Jackson. We got Sister Africa who's in the house as well. And let me do something real quick. Let me play a little bit of music, and I'm going to go into this audio by Joe Madison. And I got a powerful video for you guys to see tonight, and then that will be an end to the whole program. But I want to play a little bit of music while I fire up the audio and see who's in the chat a little bit more. Just give me a little bit of time, folks. Ladies and gentlemen, let me call out some names here. We got Money Boy Fims in the house. Back to the Basics is in the house. Sister Afro's in the house. Taylor's in the house. We've got Tiffany Jackson in the house. We got Mr. Pirate Brain in the house. Earl Owens is in the house. We got Roxanne in the house. RY is in the house. A lot of good folks in the house. We got Stacy in the house. We got my man, Guy Hollywood Jr. We got my man, Guy Hollywood Jr. in the house, everybody. Peace to you. I'm about to come on back in. And we got Jackie in the house now, too. Good to see her here. Good to see her here. Good to see her here as always. Let me come on back in here and make it do what we can make it do. So there it is, folks. I'm going to get ready to put my man Joe up here so that you can see him right next to me. I'm going to play this audio. So be patient with the audio because Joe Madison, the Black Eagle, he breaks it down, giving you the history. What I'm trying to tell you right now is don't get caught up in the bull crap in the media. They are using this term, I'm going to say it again, as the excuse that they need to whitewash history. I told you in Texas, they're trying to get rid of all history that's not favorable to white society, in which they're talking about doing away with history as it relates to even Dr. King, a man who they say is peaceful. They're actually trying to impact libraries, school libraries, to take out any books that have to do with racism. They're trying to attack people in school teaching, and this is something that came out of the college level. So you got people going buck wild over this, and this is because they have never taught proper history in the schools in this country called America. Never, ever. In the 21st century, we have never gotten a real history book. We have not gotten the whole story being told truthfully. And what's happening is that these kids today, I don't care what race they are, they're growing up and they're getting false history because the larger society wants to maintain these lies. I'm going to keep it 100% real. I believe
Tell the truth.
that white America is concerned about their kids being inundated or getting this information because they're concerned that their kids are going to learn the real truth. And therefore, if they learn the real truth, it's going to make them feel bad about themselves. And this is not what critical race theory is talking about. It's about systems that are put in place, that have been maintained, that maintain racism, white supremacy today. It's maintained, and it's been maintained through economics. America was built off of the triangular slave trade. All of your cities across this country that are near ports like New York, Chicago, but particularly New York, they were built off of the triangular slave trade. The reason why you have ports in your major cities, the reason why you have all these cities that sprung up and develop, because when they brought slaves over, they had to have someone to make the clothes. They had to have someone to build the ships. They had to have someone supply the food, all those different things. It became an industry. You have corporations that exist today. And they exist today because they made their money off of what we call the triangular slave trade. And the triangular slave trade came about because the whole world was hooked on sugar. They start moving slaves to what we call areas where they were growing sugar on sugar plantations. That's why you got black folks in Jamaica, all over the Caribbean. You had black folks that were first being brought over to Brazil. Only about 4 to 5% of black people were dropped from Brazil into America. Most of our people were dropped in Brazil, which is why Brazil is about 80 to 88% black. And in Brazil, they tried to get rid of the blackness by bringing other groups in. That's why they got Japanese over there, other Europeans over there, because they thought they were trying to erase the blackness, and they could not erase the blackness because, like I said, our genes are not recessive. The genes are powerful. I'm going to break it down to you like this. When it comes to color, why do you think when black people have children, our kids could come out all different colors and different hair textures and all kind of stuff? Because you don't get color. Color only comes out of what? Black. Color does not come out of, and I'm keeping it 100% real with you.
Tell the truth.
You can't get color out of white. Color comes out of black. Out of the black. That's where color comes from. But they don't want to tell you this. They want to tell you the truth. They don't want to tell you about the black holes. They don't want to tell you about the melanin that's in space that's responsible for creating our planet. The universe is made of melanin. This isn't about saying anyone is superior. This is the science. This is the research that they don't want people to know about. Let me go right ahead and let you hear Joe Madison right now and what the brother is saying. Let's fire that up right now. Give me just a minute.
Information is power.
Of critical race theory has been around for decades. And the purpose of it, and it was basically taught in colleges and primarily in law schools. That was how it got started. That was the concept. And this goes back, quite honestly, to W.B. Du Bois and other scholars. And it says here the concept had been around for decades, and it seek to understand and address inequity and racism in the United States. And then, of course, what happened, it got attacked by right-wingers
Tell the truth.
as being Marxists and a threat, a threat to the American way of life. So it goes on to say, you got to get into a deeper understanding of what critical race theory is and what it isn't. And so what a couple of writers did, they actually went to talk to scholars who were some of the people who are behind this theory. Now, this is what they learned and what you're going to learn right along with me. So please bear with me. Critical race theory is a practice. It's an approach to grappling with a history of white supremacy that rejects the belief that what's in the past is the past, and that the laws and systems that grow from the past are detached from it. Now, this is from Dr. I think Kimberlé, I guess that's how it's pronounced, Crenshaw, a founding critical race theorist, and by the way, you ready? A law professor who teaches right now at UCLA and Columbia University. And that might have been the person who sent me the email. Now, here's what that individual said. If you really want to understand and have a working definition of critical race theory, it's not what these folks on Fox are trying to tell you. It's not. They really don't know. That's
Facts.
like King said, the two most dangerous things on the planet: sincere ignorance. And then you couple that with conscientious stupidity. Critical race theorists believe that racism is an everyday experience for most people of color, and that a large part of society has no interest in doing away with it because it benefits white elites. Many also believe that American institutions are racist and that people are privileged or oppressed. They either are privileged on one hand, or they're oppressed because of their race. Let me repeat. That's one of the reasons they teach it. So while the theory, and here's where the law comes in, while the theory of critical race theory was started as a way, now get this, to examine, because what they don't want you to do, and I'm going to editorialize as I go along, what they don't want you to do is they don't want you to examine how laws and systems promote inequality.
Tell the truth.
Just listen,
It
folks.
has expanded. critical race theory attends not only to law's transformative role, which is often celebrated, but also to its role in establishing the very rights and privileges that legal reform has set to dismantle. Now, this is what Professor Crenshaw told CNN. Quote, like American history itself, a proper understanding of the ground upon which we stand requires a balanced assessment, not a simplistic commitment to, what is the word, jingoistic accounts of our nation's past and current dynamics. Now, let me break that down. Jingoistic, which basically the root would be jingles, people do just, well, it's a, race is not this, it's not that, it's racism doesn't exist. And then they come up with these jingle type quotes and theories.
Tell the truth.
Now, listen, who came up with this idea of critical race theory? Crenshaw is one of the founding scholars and hosted a workshop on the critical race theory movement. Now, get this, in 1989.
89. It's been around for a while,
this
folks.
Is not a new concept.
Right.
But the idea, the concept behind it goes back much further, actually to the works of civil rights activists such as W.B. Du Bois,
way back.
Fannie Lou Hamer, and Pauli Murray.
Fannie Lee Hamer,
Quote,
way back.
Everything builds on what came before. Everything builds on, listen, on what came before. In essence, once again, break it down. Your foundation. If you're going your foundation, before you can build one story, two stories, three stories, I'm just using a concept here. It's like watching these buildings go up in our neighborhood. They didn't start with the 5th floor. You can't. You start with what? The foundation. So everything builds on what came before. And Crenshaw said, adding that, quote, the so-called American dilemma was not simply a matter of prejudice, because we all have prejudice, certain prejudice, but a matter of structured disadvantages that stretched across American society. And by the way, it is built into the law. So Crenshaw said she and others took up the task of exploring the role that, you ready? This is why I got that email, that the law played in establishing the very practices of exclusion and disadvantages or disadvantage from our foundation. African Americans, by law, from the beginning,
Tell the truth.
as part of this country's foundation. Well, what? Now, that's why you go back to 1619, that Pulitzer Prize winning document, article. We were 3/5 human beings. That was a distinct disadvantage. We were slaves. That was a distinct disadvantage, and it was law. And this is what these
They don't want us to talk about it. That's the thing. They want to bury the history. And then what happens is, and I had this experience in school, you'll have people that'll say, well, I didn't enslave you, but people fail to understand is that even if you didn't physically enslave black people in this country, you benefit from what your ancestors did. Now, this isn't about trying to put some guilt on people or to tell every kid that comes to school, this is what you are. It's simply laying out the history. And this is the thing that's crazy. Since black people have been here and we start going to school, since the days of the busing, black people have been forced to learn. Even when we were in our own schools, we've always had to be forced. We've always had to learn about history from the European perspective, whether it be Roman history, Greek history, philosophers, everything. We've been taught all our lives that everything that we thought, that we never did anything great. Growing up as a kid, as a black kid, if you didn't have parents that gave you the proper history and you went to school, you would go to school getting a very inferiority complex or feeling like you've never accomplished anything. Because I remember when I was in high school, the only thing they seemed to want to talk about all the time was slavery, right? That seemed to be the whole thing, that, okay, it was Dr. King, and then you were a slave. That seems to be what everybody wants to talk about. Let me put something back up here, if I can. Hang on for a minute, folks. So that seems to be what everybody wants to talk about when it comes to our history, that it started with slavery and then Dr. King. And when I was in high school, I knew there was a lot more to it than that. But you never will know, based on the fact that they would never give you the full, real history. And so most of us, like myself, we had to learn and regurgitate the history, for the most part, of people who actually manipulated history, lied, distorted, told us lies, and told us things that weren't truth. And then when we grow up as adults and we begin to do our own research, we begin to take black studies, we begin to take things that they would call critical race theory. And now we begin to learn that, wow, all the things that I've been taught in school was nothing but a lie. It was not true history.
Tell the truth.
It was propaganda to maintain a certain group, to keep a certain group in power in this country. This is what Neely Fuller always says. This is why they're jumping all over critical race theory, because they don't want this to empower our kids. They don't want other kids of other ethnic groups to know the real history, because they do not want truth to be told. They want to keep people asleep like the Matrix. And this is what Neely Fuller Jr. said once before.
Thing having to do with black people, the white supremacists are involved. I mean, that, otherwise there would be no such thing as white supremacy. You know, if black people were just walking around, I mean, with nothing affecting them, you know, in economics, in education, in entertainment, any of the 9 areas of activity, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, war, if black people weren't affected by the system of white supremacy, there would be no point in talking about white supremacy.
Tell the truth.
So the hypothesis is, the conclusion has to be based on logic and evidence. Everything that black people do, every move that they make anywhere on this planet called Earth, is dominated by the system of white supremacy. That's what it's designed to do. Dominate all of the affairs of people classified as non-white.
Information is power.
And the reason why Neely Fuller Jr. says that, and I agree with him, is because they don't want the true history to be told. So you suppress the history. If you are in a dominant position and you fear that those that you have suppressed, or that you had some dominance over in some capacity, because you're in charge of all these different systems, then you are afraid that if knowledge is power, that people actually know the truth, that now they're going to look at you with a sideways and may not believe anything else that comes out of your mouth. And you're also concerned that you may be that people may rise up against you and do the very things that you've done to other people. What you have here with critical race theory is that everything that we do, that we learn, they have to be in the mix of and try to distort it and change it to something else. So now they can hide anything that they don't like that is related to black history. They can say, this is critical race theory. They can say that word and they can hide behind that word and say, I'm not a racist. I just think that this is harming our kids because it's teaching kids to not like each other and it's teaching people to be too focused on race and what have you. Those are all excuses.
Tell the truth.
That is, I would call tricknology. Don't go for the banana in the tailpipe. Let me read something else to you that's going on in Texas around critical race theory that I was going to put on the screen, but I can read it to you right here. This is Texas. This is the Texas Tribute. This is out of their paper. Texas senators, the Texas Senate bill seeks to strip required lessons on people of color. Y'all already know I don't like that word, people of color. But for what it's worth, that's what the article is saying. The Texas Senate bill seeks to strip required lessons on people of color and women from critical race theory law. So even when it comes to stuff about women, they want that stripped. This is what's happening in Texas right now. So you're going to have kids growing up, and unless they have parents that are astute, they're not going to have this history. And that's why my man Joe, when he was with me the other night, I thought he was right that in a couple of years, a couple of decades from now, a lot of kids are not going to know this. If this keeps getting momentum, because the Republicans are using it as a wedge issue, they're using it as a rallying port that they can rally around by telling people who look like me that if I'm teaching my history, learning my history, if I teach this history, I'm a bad person. I'm evil. It's reverse racism. Yeah, right. I'm going to say it again. Yeah, right. So if you're teaching this history, they can demonize you now under the words and the guise of critical race theory. If you are trying to seek out this information to learn, they want to strip it out of libraries and out of any kind of institutions where you would get this information from. Then they're slick because they want to say that this is targeting children and how innocent children are. They're using the little kids to make it seem like they're trying to attack our kids in school. So they're rallying around that. And you've got, I'm going to keep it 100% real. You got people, particularly white folks, that are going buck wild in council meetings and school board meetings. They're fighting. They're going buck wild because they don't want this history being taught, because they don't want their kids to learn information that they never knew. Yet at the same time, they expect kids that look like me, they expect black kids and other kids in particular to go to school and learn all the lies about what we would call quote unquote European history. They tell lies in their history. That's okay to tell those lies. But when we want to tell our truths about our history all over the world, now it's called critical race theory. And they want to stick us. They want to get us in a it's a trap. That word is a trap. So this is the thing, folks. We should not use this word. It is black history. I'm going to say it again.
Tell the truth.
This is black history. It's not critical race theory. That is just something that those on the right and those racists out there are tagging themselves to and attaching themselves to hide behind their racism by hiding around the word critical race theory.
Tell the truth.
Because they don't want their kids and they don't want anybody learning. And this is really something that comes out of law school. You learn at the college level. It's not like this is something that's being taught wholesale across the whole country, but you got all these conservatives that are going buck wild about this right now. Let's finish the rest of this. Just a little bit more left of my man, Joe Madison, the Black Eagle.
Tell the truth.
Scholars. So it says here some of the theories' earliest origins can be traced back to the 1970s.
1970s, like I said.
So that's why I say this is not new. When lawyers, activists and legal scholars realized the advances of the civil rights eras of the 1960s had stalled. It had stalled. And they put together a book titled Critical Race Theory and Introduction. Mm-hmm. And Crenshaw was part of a group of intellectuals. Derrick Bell, who, by the way, he was a friend of ours. I don't have it now because I was at Radio 1, and I believe that broadcast is probably not on tape.
Ladies and gentlemen, just want to make this announcement too. This audio is just about over. Don't go anywhere. I know it's late for a lot of you across the country. I've got a video that's going to put a crescendo on tonight and will speak for itself. Remember all those things that we hear about what's happening to black kids, particularly black males in school? And remember those stories about how they were doing things like having slave auctions and doing things that were racially insensitive to black students in some of these schools where you got these Karens as teachers? Remember I've been talking about that on the podcast? Oh, wait till you see the video that I got coming up in just a moment. Let's get back to Joe Madison, the Black Eagle. Tell the truth.
Really sorry to hear that. And then we go back to 1993, where Crenshaw and Charles Lawrence wrote a book titled Words. Now, you ready for this? This is 1993. Words That Wound, Critical Race Theory, Speech, and the First Amendment. And says some critical race theorists also believes the notion of race as a product of social thought and relations, not biology.
And keep this in mind, folks, as I stop right there for a minute. We all know that race is a social construct. A long time ago, in this world that we live in, people mainly would identify themselves by the tribe that they were a member of or a geographical location that they were a member of. So you would have people that would call themselves Egyptian, Kemet, right? I'm from Kemet. I'm a Moor, from the Moors from North Africa. And remember, another piece of history that they don't want our kids knowing is that most of Europe was in a dark ages until the Moors, who were spreading Islam across the world, civilized them. How'd they do that? Because the Moors from North Africa controlled most of Europe, places like Ireland. Remember when you were in school, this is more of the lies and the bull crap. When you were in school, they kept talking about how Europe was in a dark age. And then they never told you exactly how they came out of a dark age. They went from a dark age to a renaissance, but they left out everything in the middle as to how did Europe go from being in the dark age of no technology, no writing, nothing was going on, to all of a sudden they went from a dark age to tell the truth, to an enlightenment age of a renaissance. Well, what they failed to tell you in the history when most kids go to school is that they never, and I was in school and they told me this history, but they left out one important thing.
Tell the truth.
They left out the Africans from North Africa, the Moors, who were master navigators. They had telescopes. They were masters in science. They knew how to navigate the world. They were masters in this. They traveled, and when they were spreading Islam, they went over into Europe and conquered that part of the world and controlled it for decades. And when they were there, they left technology. They left libraries. If you go to certain places in Europe, you will see Islamic domes in certain cities. That was the Moors that left that. So when Europe came out of a dark age, it was because, and you can read about this by Ivan van Sertima, talks about this in his books. When you had the Christian Crusades, and the Christian Crusades was all about trying to drive the Moors out of Europe and drive Islamic faith out of Europe, when they were able to do that, the Moors left them technology. They left them charts and information on navigation. That's when they you start having people like Marco Polo, who was evil as well, if you look at his history, or you look at Christopher Columbus, who actually was evil too. You know what they would do when they would go to other countries and they would explore? They would cut the hand. I think Christopher Columbus would cut the hands off of the native people if they didn't pick enough gold. They didn't pick enough, they didn't get enough resources that he could take back. These Europeans, like Christopher Columbus, all these kind of folks, they learned how navigation. Christopher Columbus had a Moor on his ship. He didn't know anything about navigation. So all that technology, libraries, books, navigation, music. When I was in college, I took a class on African music and how it influenced the world. Do you know many of your classical music instruments, like the violin, all these different instruments and the musical chords come and derive from our culture? So when the Moors were driven out of Europe, they left them with all this technology, and the Europeans were able to benefit from the arts and the science because the Moors from North Africa brought the arts and the science to them. Henceforth, civilization, henceforth, civilizing them.
Tell the truth.
And every time you see these old Tarzan movies, these European type history where they say we went to this dark continent called Africa. They use the word dark to demonize it, right? And you have the colonialism that went on back in the day. We've got to civilize them, fool. It was the Africans, the Moors in particular, who civilized Europe first. That's the kind of history, ladies and gentlemen, that they don't want our kids to learn, and they don't want other race of kids to learn, to understand how history really played out and how Europe got its renaissance. They don't want you knowing that truth. They don't want you knowing that truth. I hope that you're learning something tonight. I hope that everybody is listening. School is in tonight. There's the bell. Get in class. Let's hear the rest of Joe Madison. Only a little bit left.
They correspond to non-biological or genetic reality, rather. Races, the race, plural, are categories that society invents, manipulates.
Once again, race is a social construct, like Joe Madison is saying, which society uses to manipulate. And this manipulation has been going on for a long time. People once identified themselves by their tribe and their geographical location. They used race to put us all in a different box, put us in a box, and to create problems. However, critical race theory, for those that would demonize it, that's what critical race theory is trying to get at. Or that's what Black history, because that's really what it is trying to get at. These very concepts is what most of our great Black scholars, female and male, are talking about. Let's get back.
Retires when convenient. And it goes into how it evolved over the years. And then I'm going to go to a break. He has a passionate group of followers who are mostly academics. It has inspired at least a dozen books and more than 250 law review articles and several conferences. Now, over time. So when you hear all these folks on Fox, and I can call the roll, and all these conservative right-wing talk show personalities,
right?
All you have to ask them, have you read any of these law reviews?
Law reviews.
Have you read any of these books?
Right.
And were you aware of what the critical race theory was and how it developed? And if they're honest, and they're usually not, they have to tell you, no. Is taking a legitimate theory developed by scholars, lawyers, intellectuals, sociologists, and they have basically redefined it. They've redefined it.
Redefined it.
Now,
Tell the truth.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, a clap to everybody that's been here rocking with me most of the night. It's wonderful. Wonderful to have you all here tonight. I hope everybody got something out of that tonight. Joe Madison broke it down. So basically, they've taken a theory, and I'm going to say this again because I don't like that word, theory. Our history is not a theory. Race and critical race, it's legitimate, but it's more than that. It's not a theory. It is reality that we as black people in this country and in this diaspora of the world, we live with every day. And we grew up in a society where they did not want to teach our history. Most of us in this chat room, most of you listening out there who look like me, when you grew up as a kid, you got most of your history, if you weren't lucky enough to have a mother or a father that was with this kind of knowledge, you didn't get this information until you went on to college, or that you went to a historical black college, or some school that offered this, or someone in the community who taught you this, or someone that you looked up to like a Malcolm X, for example, or a Marcus Garvey. People who are scholars in this kind of history. Remember Dr. Leonard Jeffries from New York. I think he taught at New York City College or New York College out there. And I've talked about this before. If you do your research, Leonard Jeffries was the first one when I was growing up who introduced the fact that the Statue of Liberty that you see in New York today is not what is supposed to be setting in New York today. The Frenchman who built the original design, let me break it down to you. Let's come to class here tonight. Let's come to class here. The statue that you see in the harbor in New York is not supposed to be the statue that you're looking at. They want to make you think that that statue has everything to do with Ellis Island and give me your humble, give me your hungry, give me your brave, give me your immigrants and what have you. The original design by the Frenchman who designed it, because he was against, I think he was an abolitionist, or he was one of those folks back then who was against slavery, didn't believe in it. He came up with a design of a black woman breaking the chains of enslavement. His original design was to give the United States a present saying, hey, you have freed black people from bondage and slavery. You no longer are practicing that, even though he didn't know that they were going to bring Jim Crow down the line and convict leasing down the line and slave patrols down the line. But his whole goal was to praise America with a statue of a black woman breaking the chains of slavery. Well, guess what? When he presented that original design, which most of us have not seen, the United States government was so dripping in racism, and they want to tell us that America doesn't have a foundation in racism. Yes, it does. Everything about this society was built on race because this society was built off the triangular slave trade. The triangular slave trade is what gave rise to the economy. Economically, it was the first capitalized system that fueled America. America is a capitalist system, a capitalist society, and its first form of industry and capitalism came out of the triangular slave trade, which the whole world was involved in, not just America, but the whole world. It was a global system because sugar was the drug of its time.
Tell the truth.
So when the Frenchmen presented that, talking about critical race theory, when the Frenchmen presented this statue, this statue design, they hawked at it. They turned away. They said, no way, Jose, we can't put that up there. No way. No way.
Tell the truth.
So the Frenchmen had to go back and redesign it in a way that would be more appealing to the racism and the sensibility of white society at that time. That's just the truth.
Tell the
See,
truth.
this is critical race. This is black history. But see, people listening to me out there will listen to this and say, oh, he's talking that critical race theory stuff. We got to make sure that Information Man's video doesn't get any traction. I need everybody out there, and I mean everybody out there, to share this video in all of your social media.
Tell the truth.
If you are a content creator, put it in your community tab. If you got family members, make sure the family members get this. Mother, fathers, uncles, whoever. You got friends at work that are on the same page with this kind of stuff. Make sure you get it to them. I mean, damn it, send it to everybody that you know that's on the same page with this.
Tell the truth.
I know they block me. I got tons of people who don't even get my notifications. We got about 38 people tonight. And there was 46 that I could see in the box, but there's probably a whole bunch more people out there who didn't get this tonight because they didn't get the notification. And then on top of that, I know it's late. But help me out by sharing it, everybody. I mean, all of you in there. We got Miss Full Roller in the house. Jackie's in the house. B, the difference is hanging in there with me tonight. I love it. Everybody's hanging in there with me tonight. I'm looking at my screen. We got Natural in the house. Everybody is in the house. Black Man's in the house tonight. DOD is in the house. I want to give everybody a clap that's in the house. Everybody that's in the house, thank you for rocking with me and the history that we're getting tonight. I'm just telling you, this is critical race theory. This is how this is what they're using to label what we would call historical black history and even history that comes from the continent of Africa. They can demonize it and say, this is evil, this is bad. We don't want our kids learning. We don't want nobody learning this kind of stuff. So censor that. This is just another form of censorship. Okay? Now, you do have the right to say if you don't want your kids to learn certain things. Just like you can say, I don't want my kid taking a sex education class. Even though they do need that, you have the right. But you do not have the right to say that this should not be something that should not be taught, that history, proper history, should not be taught. See, this is the thing, folks. We all have the right to our opinion, but we don't have the right to our own facts.
Information is
Tell the
power.
truth.
Now, with that said, let me get to my video that will end tonight's program. You've got to see this, and you've got to share this video. I need you to share the video, subscribe to the channel, watch a video that you haven't watched on this channel, like this video, and if you have a chance to make a comment on this video tonight, I need you to even do that tonight as well. Very important, most important to the cause tonight of what's going on as it relates to this particular subject matter. Let me put this back up here. I want to thank everybody in the chat room tonight that's come through, even if I wasn't able to name your name. We got Golden Melanin is in the house as well. That's my good sister right there. We got Marlo's Music Channel. We got I Am V in the house. Peace to you, Golden Melanin. Be the Difference is rocking with me, and I know she's up late because she's in the New York area. Let me give her a clap again. All right. Let me remind you again, if you're coming in late, the right wing is trying to take over boards of libraries to keep out books that talk about racism. The critical race theory battle invading school boards is ramping up, and you have Fox News and all these other ones that are ramping this whole thing up. Martin Luther King Jr. in the history of Martin Luther King Jr. in the KKK in Texas is under attack. They want to get rid of that. Also in Texas, again, they want to strip all lessons about people of color. You know, I don't like that word, people of color, but that's what it says on here. And critical race theory law. They want to get rid of that in the state of Texas. And they also want to get rid of lessons on women. So they're going after everything. They're attacking everything that they can in this system. They're trying to attack this system. They're trying to attack and demonize what I would call history. So with that said, let me go into this last video. It will put a crescendo on a lot of what I've said tonight. It will make you think. You need to think critically. The most important thing that you can learn in life, whether it be in school or out of school, is the ability to think critical. Critical thinking skills are very important.
Tell the truth.
And are necessary. When I was in college, that was probably the most important class, one of them that I ever took. And that was critical thinking.
Tell the truth.
And that's what critical race theory is. In theory, is that it is taking a critical examination of the systems of racism that feeds itself into capitalism, which keeps the system going, what we get the word white supremacy, and you get racism, which becomes institutionalized, which is why at one point in time in this country, if you were black, you could not go to a law school. You could not go to a quote unquote white law school. You couldn't go to a mall or eat at a certain restaurant. You could not be afforded certain rights, what have you, that white people were getting because the system that came out of capitalism and a system that maintains race by creating these social constructs of race to divide and control people socially. Social engineering.
Tell the truth.
Now, let's get at it right now, ladies and gentlemen. Here it comes, the video. Ladies and gentlemen, take something off real quick, folks. This will be the crescendo for the night. Thank you for hanging out with me as you have. Here comes the breaking news, ladies and gentlemen.
Information
is power.
By replacing the racism of the past with the racism of the critical race theory.
A whiteness
The controversy fueled by conservative media.
This is a toxic ideology.
Fox News alone has mentioned critical race theory over 1,800 times this year, up from 132 in 2020.
Critical race theory has become a catch-all, a real boogeyman under which we can kind of lump ideas of race and racism, but also under which we can broadly censor any kind of conversation around race, around racism, around inequality, around diversity.
For students like 14-year-old Chris Johnson of Aledo, Texas, our nation's racist past is still a present reality. Earlier this year, Chris and a fellow black student were targeted by classmates who set up a slave auction on Snapchat.
Can you hear that?
Screenshots
Slave
from the
auction.
group that initially called itself Expletive Auction show that the group pretended to auction the boys, one of them for $100 and another for $1. A week later, community members found flyers posted around town with the words "Great Sale of Slaves" written on them. Chris shared his painful story at the local school board meeting.
If you think that this has affected you and your job, just imagine how we actually feel. When will you make the changes needed to ensure all of us feel treated fairly and safe?
I spoke up to stand up for myself and every other kid in Aledo to just show them that that's not okay and we shouldn't be treated different.
Chris wants the school district to take action to be sure this never happens again.
We're not just going to sit back and listen to everything that they're going to say that they're going to change. We need to actually see them take initiative and change it.
A lot of times when we take them to exhibits, or we take them to marches, or we take them to vigils of people who've been wrongfully murdered, we always, kind of instill in their head, it could be us. And we looked up and it was our family.
Chris's mother, Myoshi Johnson, says talking about racism and this country's history is crucial.
The division comes from not knowing, not being aware, not having someone to, tell you or teach you. When you take that away, you have instances of, teenage boys saying slave trade, slave auction, slave farm, because no one's taught them.
The superintendent of the district said in a statement to parents, "I am deeply sorry that a few of our students engaged in racial harassment of 2 of our students of color. It was totally unacceptable to all of us, and it should not have happened." The school disciplined the students involved and outlined multiple steps to address the problem in the community.
It is a responsibility of our education system to include the entire story.
But Texas is now one of at least 26 states that have proposed or passed laws restricting or banning classroom discussions of concepts relating to race and racism that Republican lawmakers say are divisive.
When you look at these states that have banned critical race theory, they're banning the study of race and racism in America, and they are banning anything that essentially upsets this idea that America is this perfect, united place.
But perhaps nowhere else has the issue of race in education been more explosive than Loudoun County, Virginia. Slaves in a PE class and escaped to freedom through an obstacle course. The school district apologized, saying it trivializes something that is important. There was an error made here. Slavery is not a game. The NAACP filed a complaint triggering an investigation, which prompted the district to create a comprehensive equity plan and the action plan to combat systemic racism, which included creating equity ambassadors and allowing for anonymous reporting of bias incidents.
I'm here to do the best that I can for students. My students are telling me that they're having racially charged incidents in our schools. And that tells me I need to do something about that.
But those changes led to an explosion of anger and legal action. Menders and 4 other plaintiffs are suing the school board, claiming the district expects students to speak, act, and think in line with a particular ideology. Any dissent from that ideology can be labeled as bias and anonymously reported to the speech police. And in the name of dismantling systemic racism, LCPS has implemented explicit racial distinctions between...
Make sure to subscribe to his channel.
Tell the truth.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. All right, ladies and gentlemen.
You are listening to Information Man. Please make sure to subscribe to his channel.
Tell the truth.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is my presentation tonight. I hope that you all were able to get something out of the presentation. I really, most of all, hope that you really did take the time to really listen to what Joe Madison, the Black Eagle, I got to give him credit, how he really broke down the origins of what we call critical race theory. And I got to say it again. That's not a word that I really want to adapt is the word to say, because that's the word that they use to hide behind the racism. And what's happening, and I'm noticing, is that anything that has to do with black history, anybody can come up and say that it's critical race theory now. And most of the people who have a problem with critical race theory can't even define what critical race theory is. They can't give you a running definition. And they've never, like Joe Madison said, they've never read any of the books. They have no idea of what they're talking about. They've never read the books. They have no understanding of the literature. And most of them don't even know their history that well themselves, because like I said, especially the older generation, they've gone to school and they've been taught a lot of lies, a lot of mistruths in history that has favored them. And they have been culturally conditioned to believe that their history is the rule of thumb, and that anything that contradicts it in any fashion or capacity is something to be afraid of, something to demonize, and is going to change their way of life. This is all happening because, once again, America, the country, is getting more brown and black. The global society is more melanated. And this is more of that. Let me play that sound bite right here before I go tonight. I played it the other night on my other channel. And if you have not checked out the Information Man Speaks podcast, one of the mods dropped the link to that. That's on my channel here. Scroll down and subscribe to the Information Man Speaks podcast. I go live over there almost every other night during the week, and I give you hard-hitting commentary on a variety of things, podcast style. But let me find this real quick. Remember when Colt 45 said this, ladies and gentlemen?
We will make America great again.
Right? He says, we're going to make America great again. Excuse me, trying to fix my mic stand. We're going to make America great again. And that's nothing but a dog whistle for we're going to make America white again. And all the Colt 45 followers, they rally around that. And the Colt 45 leader himself, he used a lot of racial dog whistles in his campaign. And a lot of those folks are the ones who are the most up in arms about this whole thing that they call critical race theory, because they feel like they're losing their power. They're losing their control. Last time I checked, white society still controls the military, the economics of this country. They are in control of most of the institutions in this country. They're still in control, but they don't like the fact that there's things changing. There's things shifting. And now they want to attach themselves to the black history and demonize it with the term critical race theory. Now, they basically taken a legal term out of college that did not have anything demon about it, and they've turned it into something negative. How we fight back with that is that we fight back with identifying it as history, so that when you encounter someone who talks greasy about it, then you already know that it's just that they have a problem with black history, true black history being taught. It's funny how, and I must have to say this again, it's funny how that when they only tell us about Dr. Martin Luther King, and they focus more on black people being slaves, and they put out slave movies where we got handkerchiefs on our head and we're bug dancing and we're saying, yes, massa, and we're being whipped on our back like 12 years of slavery. Where was all these white folks out here and all these folks out here who don't like critical race theory? Where are they at when it comes to the slave movies? Why didn't they come out and say anything about those movies where we're getting whipped on the back and we're being enslaved? You notice none of them come out and say they don't like those movies. All these people who don't like critical race theory as it relates to school, they've got nothing to say about those movies that really put black people in a subordinate situation when it comes to slave movies. But then there was one movie that they didn't like, and that was Django Unchained, because for the first time on the movie screen, you showed a black man played by Jamie Foxx as a slave taking the whip from the overseer and whipping him with his own whip the way he was whipping him. And that was the first time in a movie. I think Dick Gregory said this when he was still alive, ladies and gentlemen.
Tell the truth.
That was the first time in a movie where you saw a black man in that kind of genre shooting up a whole bunch of white folks like that in that genre.
Tell the truth.
You've never seen that on cinema ever before. And they didn't like that because that was a different narrative. It showed the slave getting revenge on the so-called slave master in the overseers and giving them a piece of their own medicine. A lot of folks didn't like that one. But Jamie Foxx did a masterful job, and Samuel Jackson did a great masterful job playing a house in and playing a sellout and a buck dancer. And he played a really good Uncle Ben in that movie, and that was Stephen. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? We got a lot of Stevens, just like the role that Samuel Jackson played. We got a lot of Stevens like that running around today. Running around.
Tell the truth.
So you got to beware of them. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again. This has been a great night. I've enjoyed myself because I enjoy being able to convey my thoughts, my messages to the audience out there. And there are those of you out there that agree with me, and I appreciate that. And of course, there are people out there that are my detractors that may not agree with what I said tonight. And I don't really give a damn because I know I speak from truth.
Tell the truth.
I broke some things down tonight about history that was facts.
Tell the truth.
You once again look up the book Stolen Legacies. Look up the book They Came Before Columbus by Ivan Van Sertima. Look at the destruction of I think there was a book called The Colonialization of Africa, or The Destruction of Africa. There are all these powerful books that you can read. There's also Black History 101. Check that book out. There's a whole bunch of literature out there that you need to study and look up and research, because you're not going to get this stuff in your regular high school. Most of the history that kids are getting in high school in terms of its truthfulness, its in-depthness, is inferior already. It's all inferior. So, ladies and gentlemen, have a great night. I want to wish everybody in the chat room that came through. Let's see, we got RY in there. We got DOD. We got Golden Melanin. We got Miss Full Roller in the house. What's going on, my sister? We got Tiffany Jackson. We got a bunch of folks. We got IMV. We got everybody rocking with me. We got J-Lo Riches in the house. Be the Difference Clothing. I love that sister in the house. Earl Owens. All of you are rocking with me pretty strong tonight. I really appreciate that. So let me get on out of here. I would have liked to have gone with this I was going to say podcast. I'm so used to the other channel now. I would have liked to have gone live on this subject a lot earlier in the day, but I'm going to push this video to as many places as possible to get as many people to get their eyeballs on it, and I would like you to do the same. So thank you again. Make sure, if you have not subscribed to this channel, that you subscribe and share this video, like the video, share it in your community tab of your content creator, and share the video in all of your social media. Everybody out there, I love you. Good night. Take care, folks. Thank you. You're the best, everybody. Everybody out there is the best. Thank you. And good night. Woo!
You are listening to Information Man. Please make sure to subscribe to his channel.
Tell the truth.
You are listening to Information Man. Please make sure to subscribe to his channel.
Peace.
Tell the truth.
Information is power.
Information Man Show. Information Man Show. Tell the truth. Tell the truth. Shame the devil and tell the truth. Yes, right. Tell the truth. Yeah.
Information is power.
Tell the truth.
Information is power.
You do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is, and how it works. Everything else that
Information
you understand
is power.
will only confuse you. Only confuse you.
I want to say thank you, everybody. I appreciate everybody in the chat room, all the mods. All of you are the best. Thank you, family. I really appreciate everybody, as usual.
Information. You are listening to Information Man. Please make sure to subscribe to his channel.
Good night, everybody. Peace.
You are listening to Information Man. Please make sure to subscribe to his channel.
Tell the truth. Tell the truth. Tell the truth.